Hello everyone, welcome back to the Tent of Abraham. I'm Tamir Kreisman from Jerusalem, Israel, and this is the final redemption, chapter 4. So this is what we're going to discuss right now. As the Gra explained from the Zohar Chadash, that the beginning of the Pekidah is going to be as in the days of Cyrus. We're getting right into it. This is a series. Good luck catching up if you missed it. So now we're going to bring everything that we have learned over the past few classes and apply it here along with introducing some new elements. We're nowhere near done, but you're getting an education now. Masechet Ketuvot 110b. Rabbi Zeira, we already know him, was avoiding being seen by his teacher Rav Yehuda, as Rabbi Zeira sought to ascend to Eretz Yisrael and his teacher disapproved. We learned this story. As Rav Yehuda said, anyone who ascends from Babylonia to Eretz Yisrael transgresses a positive mitzvah, mitzvat aseh. As it stated, they shall be taken to Babylonia, and there they shall remain until the day that I recall them, said the Lord. Where is this from? Jeremiah 27:22. Based on that verse, Rav Yehuda held that since the Babylonian exile was imposed by divine decree, permission to leave Babylonia for Eretz Yisrael could be granted only by God. God said, you go here. Only God say, time to go back. But the Gemara asks, how does Rabbi Zeira interpret that verse? The Gemara answers that Rabbi Zeira maintains that verse is written about the temple service vessels, dafka. And it does not refer to the Jewish people. As the previous verse states, thus says the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, concerning the vessels that remain in the house of the Lord. Jeremiah 27:21. Consequently, Rabbi Zeira sought to ascend to Eretz Yisrael, as we have learned. And he did. The way that our sages make the connection between Jeremiah's words regarding the exile of the first temple period to the final redemption may raise some questions. But the Gra illuminates this topic through the series of events that had taken place and then by default will take place, and they are the Pekidah and the Zechirah. And as we have been learning that everything that was said of the return to Zion back then is also the order that it will happen during the final redemption. So just like Rabbi Yehuda understood that Israel was to return from the exile because of what was said in Jeremiah, or not return because of what was said in Jeremiah 27:22, right, which we just read, so too in the final redemption Israel may not return to the land until the time of the Pekidah, meaning that it would not have even been possible to do so. Meaning that if we are here now, and we are, regardless of how messed up the circumstances might have been to get us here, and yes they were and yes they are we not then currently in the time of Pekidah? Granted, a bunch of things still have to happen, obviously, an apocalypse, a war, and of course the revelation of not one, but two messiahs before we get to the fulfillment of the Zechirah part. But as you can see, the apocalypse is well underway, and the war has already begun. So, keep your eyes peeled. You see, prophecy is like building blocks, and all are dependent one upon the other. After all, they come from the same source, right? Where there is no contradiction. And if there seems to be a contradiction, that only means that what? That we have to dig deeper to find the meaning. God does not contradict himself. For instance, in the end of Masechet Brachot, it tells that Rabban Gamliel, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Rabbi Yehoshua, and Rabbi Akiva were walking along the road in the Roman Empire. And they heard the sound of the multitudes of Rome from Puteoli, at a distance of 120 miles. The city was so large that they were able to hear its tumult from a great distance, and the other sages began weeping, and Rabbi Akiva was laughing. They said to him, "For what reason are you laughing?" Rabbi Akiva said to them, "And you, for what reason are you weeping?" They said to him, "These Gentiles who bow to false gods and burn incense to idols dwell securely and tranquilly in this colossal city, And for us, the house of the footstool of our God, the temple, is burnt by fire, and shall we not weep? Rabbi Akiva said to them, that is why I am laughing. If for those who violate his will, the wicked, it is so, and they are rewarded for the few good deeds they performed, and for those who perform his will, all the more so will they be rewarded. On another occasion, they were ascending to Jerusalem after the destruction of the temple. When they arrived on Mount Scopus and saw the site of the temple, they rent their garments in mourning in keeping with halachic practice, right? You tear your garments, that's a sign of evil. You do this usually when a sign of mourning when someone dies, or if a family member dies, or if during some fast you can choose to put sackcloth and ashes on you. So when they arrived on Temple Mount, they saw a fox from Mount Scopus, Temple Mount. And when they arrived on Temple Mount, they saw a fox that emerged from the site of the Holy of Holies, where the Holy of Holies, Kodesh HaKodeshim, used to be. They began weeping, and Rabbi Akiva was laughing. They said to him, for what reason are you laughing, man? Rabbi Akiva said to them, for what reason are you weeping? They said to him, this is the place concerning which it is written, and a non-priest who approaches shall die, from Numbers 151. And now foxes walk in it, and shall we not weep? Rabbi Akiva said to them, that is why I am laughing. As it is written, when God revealed the future to the prophet Isaiah, he said, and I will take to me faithful witnesses to attest, Uriah the priest and Zechariah the son of Yebechiah, right? Isaiah 8:2. Now, what is the connection between Uriah and Zechariah? He clarifies the difficulty. Uriah prophesied during the first temple period, and Zechariah, as we know, prophesied during the second temple period. He was one of the returnees from Babylonia, as he was among those who just wrote that. Okay, yes. Rather, the verse established that fulfillment of the prophecy of Zechariah is dependent on fulfillment of the prophecy of Uriah. They're linked, and one is dependent upon the other. In the prophecy of Uriah it is written, therefore, for your sake Zion shall be plowed as a field. For your sake, plowed as a field, flattened, and Jerusalem shall become rubble, and the Temple Mount as the high places of a forest. Micah 3:12, where foxes are found. See? This was prophesied by Uriah. In the prophecy of Zechariah it is written, there shall yet be, as in there will be, regardless of everything that we just saw and he said, there will be elderly men and elderly women sitting in the streets of Jerusalem, Zechariah 8:4. Until the prophecy of Uriah with regard to the destruction of the city was fulfilled, I was afraid, says Rabbi Akiva, that the prophecy of Zechariah would not be fulfilled, as the two prophecies are linked, as they all are. You just have to find that connection. Now that the prophecy of Uriah was fulfilled, and they saw, it is evident that the prophecy of Zechariah remains valid. To which the sages said to him, employing this formulation as in, I'm feeling your logic, right? Akiva, you have comforted us. Akiva, you have comforted us. So do you understand what's going on here? The bottom line is this. Just like the prophecies of the first temple, exile, and then return are related to the prophecies of the second temple, exile, and return, so too the prophecies of the second temple exile are related to that from the exile and return for the third temple. It's like building blocks, and thus far everything is coming into fruition. So let's take a look at what prophecies are left and the method and order by which God is going to make all these things happen. He's giving us a formula. By the end of this class, we should already see this formula. Like this class, not the series, this class. So let's apply everything we know so far and see where we stand. So according to the Gra, the Vilna Gaon, when we began these classes, we discussed that in the time of the Pekidah, Israel are going to be freed from the subjugation of foreign nations. Again, that's not at the moment the Pekidah starts, but within that time. That's part of what it is. As this will, of course, happen before the days of Mashiach ben David. And when it is time for Messiah ben David to reign, all the other prophecies will be fulfilled, including, but not limited to, God pouring out his Spirit on all flesh. Everything is completed with Mashiach ben David, right? That's when whatever's left in the tank, that's when it gets completed. Now, regarding the Pkidah in the first redemption, that's going to be similar to the time of Cyrus, when the nations will give Israel permission to return to their land and build Jerusalem. So we know that we are already in that part of the Pkidah process, but clearly we are not free of the subjugation of the nations because, well, we're nowhere near free. Not to mention, the Temple Mount situation. Hosea 14:8 says, "Those who dwelt in its shade shall return. They shall revive like corn and blossom like the vine. Its fragrance shall be like the wine of Lebanon. Yashuvu yoshvei betzilo, yichayu dagan, ve'yifrachu kagafen, zichro keyain Lebanon." So the Gra explains, Yashuvu, they shall return from where? From the exile. Betzilo, in its shade. What shade? In the land of Israel. Yichayu dagan, shall revive like corn. Revive, yichyu, chai, right? Life. The dead who are tchiyat hametim, tchiyah, chai. The dead who are to be resurrected based on their connection to the Torah. Ve'yifrachu kagafen, blossom like the vine. Gafen, gefen is wine, but translated to the vine. This is the building of the temple, as in Psalms 92:14. Planted in the house of the Lord, in the courts of our God, they will flourish. But ifrachu, we're going to read the Hebrew, shetulim beveit Adonai, planted in the house of God, bechatzrot Eloheinu, yafrichu. And the verse says, veifrachu kagefen, same word. Zichro keyain Lebanon, its fragrance shall be like the wine of Lebanon. This is the world to come. So, before all the prophecies are fulfilled of the building of the temple, and the resurrection of the dead, and the end of death itself, Israel would have already come back from the exile and settle in the land. All this has to happen before all that happens. So again, we see that we are currently living right now in our time within prophecy. We could point into the Torah and find where we are. In Shir HaShirim Rabbah, regarding Shir HaShirim 2:10, which says, "My beloved raised his voice and said to me, Arise, my beloved, my fair one, and come away. Anadodi v'amar li kumi lach ra'ayati yafati, ulechi lach." My beloved raised his voice through Daniel, who said that the time has been complete, the 70 years, and said through Ezra, who exacted the words and took action, right? My beloved raised his voice, Daniel, and said to me, Ezra, "Arise, my beloved fair one, and come away. Go back to Israel. Now's the time." Another thing, my beloved raised his voice through who? Through Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, and said to me regarding the coming of King Messiah. Prophecy for the second temple, prophecy for end times. What did he say? "Arise, my beloved, my fair one, and come away. It is finally time." He said to the Mashiach, like, okay, here we go. We've been waiting for a long time for this one. Rabbi Azariah said about the next verse regarding end times, "For behold, the winter has passed. The rain is over and gone." It's also this next verse in Shir HaShirim. The winter has passed is the rule of Romi, which has deceived the whole world. Currently. The rain is over and gone. This is the subjugation. So our sages have likened the Pkidah during the days of Cyrus, which is the reign that passed before the completion of the redemption, along with the Exodus, or freedom from subjugation of the nations, and that is the completion of the Pkidah in the final redemption. That's when the Pkidah part is done. Now you can take this formula and you can apply it to the redemption from Egypt. Let's see if it works. The winter has passed. These were the 210 years in Egypt. The rain is over and gone. These were the final 86 years of subjugation from the time Miriam was born. We did a whole class on it exactly according to the timeline. And we can also see that Israel were released from subjugation before they left Egypt, right? We discussed exactly this timeline, which is already the first step towards redemption. We see the same thing happen in the days of Cyrus, and we see the same process in the final redemption. Behold, God's process. As the Ramchal said in his Secrets of Redemption, the Egyptian redemption and the final redemption are almost exactly the same, except that the final redemption is going to be much greater. So remember, what happened there in Egypt were the greatest events since the creation. But what's going to happen in the end of days? Like we said, we will forget what happened in Egypt, not because it wasn't awesome, but because of the awesomeness that is going to take place in the end times, in the end of days, in the very end. A time where all of creation will be at rest, finally, peace, menucha, in a way it has never experienced since creation of the world until that very day. As both the Ramchal and the Gra agree that the Egyptian redemption and the final redemption are linked, as the Gra wrote in his commentary to Shir Shirim Rabbah, that the exodus from Egypt is the blueprint to all the redemptions, and so it shall be in the final redemption. And the Ramchal refers to Micah 7:16 that says, 15, as in the days of your exodus from the land of Egypt, I will show him wonders. As in the days, that's what I'm going to show you. As in, it's going to be similar, but better. So now we have the stages of redemption in Egypt. Let's just review them quickly. We discussed this, okay? Ve'otzeti, ve'etzalti, ve'ga'alti, ve'lakachti. Those are the four arba lashonot geula, but there's two more. Ve'heveti, ve'natati. We will discuss. I have removed you from under the suffering of Egypt. This is when the work ceased. Vehitzalti, and I saved you from bondage. Slavery ceased. Work ceased. Slavery ceased. Vega'alti, and I have redeemed you with an outstretched arm and great wonders. This is the Exodus. Velakachti, and I have taken you for myself as a nation, and I will be your God. Mount Sinai. Veheveti, and I have brought you to the land I promised Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, land of Israel. Venatati, and I have given a heritage settled. This is settling in the land. So all this can be found in Exodus 6. You can take a look at that, but we will be reviewing these verses, so you can sit tight in the meantime. The redemption, as discussed, must come little by little, one step at a time. Has to, especially the final redemption. You can't look at Egypt. Egypt was like a womb. It was like a redemption on super steroids, if you will. It had to happen. God had to make it happen because we couldn't have done it on our own. So first, they had to be freed from bondage before they could wrap their heads around what was even happening, let alone having the mental constitution to walk out the front gate. No one gets out of Egypt. We discussed this, right? We were talking back when I was teaching the Parashot. You were not getting out of Egypt. The mem was closed. It was Mitzrayim. Before, now is Mitzrayim, closed mem. Everybody that was in Egypt could not leave through those 10 gates. After all, they had been in bondage for 86 years, from the time Miriam's birth until the Pekidah process began. Just because the Pekidah process began did not mean that they walked out the gate, don't forget. In the Gra's commentary for Isaiah 2:5, he breaks it down using two other verses. O house of Jacob, come and let us go in the light of the Lord, because in the future darkness will cover the earth, right? Isaiah 60, verse 2, behold, darkness shall cover the earth, and a gross darkness the kingdoms, and the Lord shall shine upon you, and his glory shall appear over you. As a result, and based on what we just read, Israel will be the only ones able to see because the light shines upon us. It's almost like the darkness in Egypt. It wasn't that it was light where Israel were. Wherever a man from Israel went, there was light, and only he could see. In other words, the Egyptian in darkness, completely engulfed in darkness, who could not move for 15 days, could not see the man from Israel standing right next to him. But the man from Israel, everything was lit up because the light didn't come from the outside. You understand? And so it will be. Again, we're expecting, before the coming Mashiach, 15 days of darkness. Yep, in our day and age. So says the Zohar. 15 days of darkness. And things are going to happen during that time. Anyway, Isaiah 60, verse 3. And the nation shall go by your light, and kings by the brilliance of your shine. So you understand, in the end of days, the house of Jacob will go, lechu, and we, meaning the nations, will go, nelcha, in the light of the Lord. Let's read that in Hebrew. Beit Yaakov lechu v'nelcha be'or Hashem. Beit Yaakov, go, v'nelcha, and we will follow you in the light of God. Okay, we got that. So the only connection the nations have to God's light are Israel. That's it. That's it. This is by design. Those who can see will lead those who cannot. Just like in Egypt when God removed, saved, redeemed, and took. So let's read Isaiah 2, verses 2 to 5. And it shall be at the end of days that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be firmly established at the top of the mountains, and it shall be raised above the hills, and all the nations shall stream to it. And many peoples shall go, and they shall say, come, let us go up to the Lord's mount, to the house of the God of Jacob, and let him teach us of his ways, and we will go in his paths. For out of Zion shall the Torah come forth. Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah. It was back then, it is today. Okay? A lot of Torah is taught from a lot of different places in the world. But God said it comes out of Zion. Zion, Israel, Jerusalem. Hi. Just saying. For out of Zion shall the Torah come forth, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. And he shall judge between the nations and reprove many peoples, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and the spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift the sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. We're done. O house of Jacob, come and let us go in the light of the Lord. So says the nations through the house of Jacob. From bondage to the redemption, from foreign nations to the mountain of God, after which we shall walk in the light of God. Well, us and the nations who follow us. After which, Zephaniah 3:9, for then I will convert, God says, then I will convert the peoples to a pure language, that all of them call in the name of the Lord to worship him of one accord. Again, at this point, you don't necessarily have to convert to Judaism or to become one of Israel if you are not originally anyway. If you are of the nations, you will still be able to speak Hebrew, the holy tongue, and you will worship God as the nations, not as Israel. It's different jobs, okay? Respect for everybody. Know where you stand, okay? Okay. And these are the things of which the Gra spoke of in Sefer Yetzirah, the book of formation. This is just as it was during the time of the Exodus from Egypt. In exile, everything was hidden and shut, which is also why Pharaoh said in Exodus 5:2, and Pharaoh said, who is this Lord? Me Hashem, the Yud Kei Vav Kei, that I should heed his voice to let Israel out. I do not know the Lord, neither will I let Israel out. Now again, if you just read this in English, you're like, oh, what a chutzpah. Of course he knows God. Yeah, he knows God. He knows Elohim. Elohim was known at that time. Elohim was known as judgment. Remember, only Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob knew him as El Shaddai. But the Yud Kei Vav Kei was only introduced for the first time in history to Moses, who then said, hey, Yud Kei Vav Kei said, let my people go. And Pharaoh was giving an honest answer. He goes, I don't know who you're talking about. Okay? All right. Because again, exile, hidden, shut. He's like, oh, you don't? You're gonna. Again, if Israel doesn't know, no one will. Moses was essentially the one who introduced the aspect of Yud Kei Vav Kei not only to his people, but to the nations as well, as it was shown to him in the burning bush. He saw everything. So at first, during the revelation at the burning bush, God showed Moses all the signs and wonders to come. This is called the process of ibur, conception. Remember this. This has the same root of the word ubar, which is fetus. It's a form of a beginning process to the process itself, as we know. Just like the Exodus itself, as well as the crossing of the sea was considered the birth. From the time of the Exodus, crossing the sea, that was, okay, here we go, baby's coming out now. That was that process. Now we'll get into that too. So between those two events, there were 7 days, as we know, to which God commanded his children to eat matzot. Exodus 12:15, 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. These 7 days are the secret of the 70 years that Israel will be exiled in the future, before the second redemption took place during the days of Babylon. These are the 7 months that the doe of the dawn, Ayelet HaShachar, remember her, is pregnant, as written in the Faithful Shepherd, Re'eh Mehemana. These are also the 7 weeks of Shavuot, after which we receive the Torah. Once this time was complete, right after the receiving of the Torah, they were commanded to what? Build the Mishkan. Moses went up, the first thing he said, this Parashat Truma. Here we go. Give me a Truma, build the Mishkan. Okay, why? Exodus 25:8, and they shall make a sanctuary, and I will dwell in their midst. V'asuli mikdash v'shachanti betocham. The Mishkan is a mikdash. Mikdash is a temple. Mishkan is a Mishkan. But anyway, they are actually one and the same. They're just inner sanctuaries. And so it will be during the days of Mashiach. At first there will be an ibur, a conception, and then naturally birth. And these in between and all around them are called Chavlei Mashiach, the birth pangs of Messiah, or the ropes of Messiah, as we learned, because they come one after the other, they're all connected. But the birth pangs of Messiah. This is the time of trouble for Israel. To which Isaiah said in 66:8, who heard anything like this? Who saw anything like these? Is a land born in one day? Is a nation born at once? That Zion both experienced birth pangs and bore her children? This prophecy took place in 1948. Because, yeah. So make no mistake, we are in this time right now. And what is to come next is what Joel said in 3:1. And it shall come to pass afterwards. Again, there's like, if this happened here, afterwards could be here, it could be here. Things have to happen. These are puzzle pieces, we're putting them together. And it shall come to pass afterwards that I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh. Has this happened yet? Not yet, right? And your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, your elders shall dream dreams, your young men shall see visions. Right? Did not happen yet. Then Isaiah 11:9. They shall neither harm nor destroy on all my holy mount, for the land shall be full of knowledge of the Lord. We're going to come back to this verse a lot. As waters cover the seabed, concluding with Zechariah 14:9, and the Lord shall become king over all the earth. On that day shall the Lord be one, Ushmo Echad, and his name one. Now, let's take a side-by-side look at the prototype redemption, meaning Egypt, next to the final redemption. The conception, the ibur, okay? Like I said, write it down. It's a key word. Just like Kidan Zchira, ibur. The ibur, the conception, is the entire time and everything that came with the Egyptian exile. This is why you will keep reading throughout the Tanakh how God brought us up from Egypt in order to make us a people, his people. This is why we say it on Shabbat, every time we say Kiddush, on every holiday, Zecher le'etziat Mitzrayim, remembrance of what happened in Egypt. What is God trying to say? But we're just, regurgitating, no one ever looks into it. This could not have happened in any other way, which is why he had to bring us down in order to bring us up. This is how this process began, i.e., conception. Something's got to go somewhere. And if we look at several of the Ramchal's works, including Knowing God's Plan, Sefer HaKlalim, the book of rules, and the way of God, we can see that there have been 2,000 years of the age of chaos. Candle, don't forget those timelines. 2,000 years of the age of chaos leading into 2,000 years of the age of Torah. That is the second part. Particularly when Israel were in bondage in Egypt, and that itself is the conception, ibul, when the ubar, the fetus, is hidden in its mother's womb. What's going on? I don't know. And so during the same time of conception, it would seem that God himself is hidden from his world. Where's God? We're in bondage. What God? Did you hear about this God? It's a myth. Chas v'shalom, of course. And it would seem that God forbid he just left. But that is not the case, as we know, because we have been learning. The reasons he remains hidden during these times, that's not the reason. And this hiddenness of God is your standard practice while Israel are in exile. Again, exile means no Israel, in Israel no temple, that's exile. Israel in Israel no temple, still exile. Exile. And there is no better example than that story than this in the story of Purim. As God's name is not mentioned once in the book of Esther, we've already done studies on this, and yet after learning about it, we see his hand and direction in every single aspect of his creation, of his existence over there. From, somebody, Achashverosh, waking up in the middle of the night and thinking a thought. Who put that thought in his head? It was God. Who put those two guys there? Who put this guy here? Who made him think this? Who made him hear that? Everything is God's hand in everything, hidden, yet not. The Gra writes in Yahel Or how the exile is like a pregnant woman that gets closer to giving birth every single day. Just like a pregnancy, at first it's all but hidden, and yet slowly but surely there's no more hiding the fact of the situation of what's going on over there, and obviously what's going to happen next. Like, oh, you're pregnant, that's nice. We all know a baby's coming, right? This is likened to God loving his creation as he watches and maneuvers events in order to bring them into a complete rectification. That's the purpose of all this. Tikkun olam, baby. And even while his face is hidden, he does not discard his world, but rather calls for the fixing of that which is broken. The thing is that all this is done in a hidden way, as we discussed. And because of this, the world suffers tremendously. The chavelim, the ropes, or rather birth pangs, as we discussed, are what happened to Israel the moment Moses came before Pharaoh. The Redeemer was sent, and all of a sudden we have birth pangs. Yeah, that's exactly when you have birth pangs, because someone's going to give birth. Exodus 5:9, let the labor fall heavy upon the men, and let them work at it, and let them not talk about false matters, said Pharaoh. And these are the birth pangs that come before the birth itself. Just like Isaiah said in chapter 26, 17 and 18, as a pregnant woman comes near to give birth, she shudders, she screams in her pangs. So were we because of you, O Lord. We conceived, we shuddered as though we bore wind. We wreak no salvation in the land, neither do the inhabitants of the world fall. And when a woman is about to give birth, the pain is more intense and severe than the entire pregnancy combined. And this is what God was telling us, as well as what he was telling the woman in Genesis 3:16. To the woman he said, I shall surely increase your sorrow and your pregnancy. In pain you shall bear children. And your sorrow is the exile, the galut. And these are the birth pangs. This is the pain of Mashiach. Before the coming of Mashiach, there's a process. The harder it gets, the closer we are. Be excited. And in the Gra's notes on Tikkunei Zohar 22, he said, first Messiah will be revealed and then he will be concealed. And Israel will have tremendous birth pangs and contractions just like in the first redemption, in Egypt. And the thing that is at first, they will be redeemed in the order of the judgment. If so, none will be able to stand, right? If we go through a redemption only on judgment, like we discussed, no one's getting out alive, okay? And this is a time of Messiah ben Yosef. And if it's only judgment and Messiah ben Yosef is the one that sees us through, he's going to end up dying, which is why the Messiah ben Yosef will be concealed until he is revealed again and joins Messiah ben David, so that they will be redeemed with great mercy. They, meaning Israel. The source of these things is in Psika de Rav Kahana, chapter 5, section 8, from Shir Shirim 2:9. דומה דודי לצביעו לעופר האלים, הנה זה עומד אחר קטלנו משגיח מן החלונות, מציץ מן החרקים. My beloved resembles a gazelle or a fawn of the hills. Behold, he is standing behind a wall, looking from the windows, peering from the cracks, the lattices. Rabbi Yitzchak said, what's the deal with this gazelle? What's the deal here with this gazelle appearing and then disappearing, coming and going? So too will be the first Messiah. He will appear, disappear, and appear again. How long will he disappear for? Watch me shatter the Christian narrative. Rabbi Yehuda says a total of 3 months, as is written in Exodus 5:20. Okay, he will disappear for 2,000 years and then he'll come back. Okay, 5:20. They met Moses and Aaron standing before them, and they came out of Pharaoh's presence. And just like the Gra said, the process will begin with judgment, and only afterwards the aspect of mercy will rise. And since Moses said in Exodus 5:23, since I have come to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has harmed this people, and you have not saved your people. It was said to him that from the moment the process of the 4 stages of Arba Lashonot Geulah that we said have begun, it's Ve'otzeti ve'etzalti, we'll start with those two. Ve'otzeti and I have removed you from under the suffering of Egypt. This is when the work ceased. Ve'etzalti and I saved you from bondage. Slavery ceased. If the situation were to end right there, that's when Messiah ben Yosef would die, because this is the extent of his mission. He's supposed to do those 2 things. But we already said that Moses, because this is the prototype, Moses was acting the parts of both Ben Yosef and Ben David, right? Vega'alti, I have redeemed with an outstretched arm and great wonders. This is the Exodus. And this is a time of the birth itself, which has a process of its own. I mean, the baby doesn't just pop out, right? But you can begin to see the crown, i.e. the Rona. A whole lot of breathing, pushing, and, cussing is involved. Not to mention blame. You did this to me. So this birth process began when they went out of Egypt and was completed at the splitting of the sea after they crossed. The final shout that Israel gave on that shore over there that day, that was the final push. And that's what split the sea. It was the shout. It was the scream. This is also what we discussed about the 70 voices being shouted out. 7 days, 7 weeks, 7 months, 7 years, 70 years. All discussed. This is a part of the actual birthing process, as Isaiah said in 13:8. And they shall panic. Pangs and throes shall seize them like a woman in confinement. They shall writhe. Each man shall be amazed at his fellow. Their faces are faces of flames. What's going on here? So Israel will be in sorrow for 7 days against those 70 voices. Remember, they left Exodus 7 days, still have no idea what's going on. How are we walking through this gate? Any moment now they're coming to kill us. And they did come to kill them. They failed, and here it is. So, how is this related to all these 7 days against the 70 voices? Exodus 14:10. Pharaoh drew near, and the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians were advancing after them. They were very frightened, and the children of Israel cried out to the Lord. Vayitzaku, screamed out to God, Me'Yisrael Hashem. These are the very contractions to bring them back to where they needed to be. This is the tshuva process, where they should be redeemed because they made tshuva. This is it. As much as God loves us, He doesn't give any freebies, He doesn't give any handouts despite what anybody thinks. He gives everyone equally the opportunity to do tshuva. The reason you were created and the reason the world stands is because of tshuva. I'll discuss this with you another time. Different book. And if we don't do it on our own, He will create a scenario in which we will certainly do it. In Shmot Rabbah, they discuss the meaning of, and Pharaoh drew near. We've also discussed this. Uparo hikriv. Hikriv comes from the word karov, karev, korban, sacrifice, or rather offering. But the reason that it is of the same word as karov, which is close or drew near, is because when we give an offering to God or a sacrifice, we draw near to Him as a result. And so what Pharaoh drew near was not himself, but rather Israel to God. How so? By coming to completely annihilate them. And that's it. Like, is that all it's going to take? Okay. He did us a favor, basically. Perfectly orchestrated by God to get us to the final crescendo, that note where we shook the heavens, realizing that nothing and nobody could save us except for God and God alone. And it worked. And it's going to happen again, mind you. We need it to. Do you see Israel doing tshuva? I don't. Everyone wants to get back to how it was. How was it? In this regard, Rabbi Brachia said, and I quote, Yafa hayta hakravat par'o leYisrael mimea tzomot u'tfilot. You hear that, all you Hebrew speakers? Say it in English. Pharaoh's drawing near was better for Israel than 100 fasts and prayers. No fasting or prayers could have achieved the same result. That was not the time. Now, I need you to shout frantically, like your life depends on it. Now's not the time to pray and to fast. Shout, scream, like your life depends on it. Because it does. And as we said, that final shout that Israel let out to God was so pure and so on point. It was the final shout of the birth itself. And Israel were not worthy to be redeemed on their own merit. And that's why it wasn't just that moment that brought them to full repentance, but it was the 7 days leading up to it as well. You get it? There was a tremendous struggle during those 7 days. God had to bring them to repentance against their will and even against their ability. They could not get there. God had to squeeze them, meaning the place that they needed to be could not have been achieved on their own. Do you understand just how much God loves us? Do we see how a seemingly terrible thing is what enables us to draw near to God, thereby experiencing His wonders? And this is exactly the same formula that we have seen during the redemption of the Second Temple period. In Masechet Megillah 14a, it says, now listen up, because this is going to happen again. Pay attention, look around, wait for it. Do not sit securely anywhere in the world, especially if you're a Jew. Listen up. Masechet Megillah 14a. And the king removed his ring from his hand. This is from Esther 3:10. Rabbi Abba Bar Kahana said, the removal of Achashverosh's ring for the sealing of Haman's decree was more effective than 48 prophets and 7 prophetesses who prophesied on behalf of the Jewish people. Wow. I guess we don't listen. As they were unable to return the Jewish people to the right way, but the removal of Achashverosh's ring returned them to the right way, since it brought them to repentance. The sages taught, 48 prophets and 7 prophetesses prophesied on behalf of the Jewish people, and they neither subtracted from nor added on to what is written in the Torah, because a prophet has absolutely no free will. They have to say exactly what they see to the best of their ability, and that's it. They can't make any rules or deviate from anything. They are messengers straight up, okay? So they could not change anything that was in the Torah, obviously, introducing no changes or additions to the mitzvot except for the reading of the Megillah, which they added as an obligation for all future generations. This was the only thing added, and it is in the Torah. Although God began the redemption process through Cyrus, which we learned, Israel were not worthy of it based on their own merit. The time was up. You can return now, but you guys aren't ready. Just like in Egypt, you weren't ready. Time for you to go, but you're still not ready. Don't worry, I'll get you there. Pharaoh, Haman, thank you, God. So a proper squeezing is in order. You need to see and feel and understand and acknowledge where you are in order for you to hit those high notes, baby. It happened the first time, it happened the second time. Are we seeing a pattern right now? Get excited, people. I hope you do, because this is how the final redemption is going to come about. But don't take my word for it, although you should, because I'm reading straight from the text. But let's read another source. Sanhedrin 97b. Rabbi Eliezer says, if the Jewish people repent, they are redeemed. And if not, then they are not redeemed. What? So in other words, if for the Jewish people, you don't do tshuva, you're done, you're not redeemed? God put his name in us. Wait. Rabbi Yehoshua said to him, if they do not repent, will they not be redeemed at all? Really? Come on. Great question, one that often arises, especially when you look around at our extremely sad state. But Rabbi Yehoshua answers, rather the Holy One, blessed be He, will establish a king for them, last days, whose decrees are as harsh as those issued by Haman, and the Jewish people will have no choice but to repent, and this will restore them to the right place. Whew. Oh, can you dig it? Do you understand? Like Haman, as in annihilation, decreed, let it be written. And according to this is the revelation of Messiah ben David. As the Gra noted in Tikkunei Zohar, that the last 70 years of Chavlei Mashiach, the birth pangs of Messiah, are actually in the days of Messiah ben David, not ben Yosef. This is a big misconception that people have, that Mashiach comes and it's all over. But everything that we've been reading right now, right? You're getting an education. We didn't even start, believe it or not even getting into the nitty-gritty, and we will, not in this class, but you are getting a good solid education here. Everything we've been reading, none of which is our opinion, but rather it's all biblical texts, extra biblical and rabbinical sources, tells us that there is a process. It's a formula. And this process is God's process, and therefore He must have a reason, and therefore it's going to stand. Now this reason largely is tikkun olam, rectification of the world. How do we rectify the world? Through rectifying ourselves, because every nefesh of Israel is called olam umlo, a whole world. Okay? We are the world, we are the children. This is why God corrects the world through Israel. Israel don't do their job, world gets angry, anti-Semitism is on the rise. You see, you don't see the pattern? So if anti-Semitism is on the rise, that means that Israel are not doing what we are supposed to do. Why is anti-Semitism on the rise? Because we're not in Israel. If we were in Israel, okay, go ahead. Anti-Semite us all you want from whatever country you're from, France or whatever. Fine. You understand? It's patterns. Recognize. So although Mashiach ben Yosef will come first and take out Israel from under the subjugation of the nations, and the hard labor will cease, he still has to be concealed for a while, so he won't die. While he will be gone, there will be pandemonium in the world like we cannot even begin to imagine. And when he returns, after 3 months, relax, there will be Gog and Magog, right? This is the final war, which he will have to fight against the remaining nations led by Esav. And then he will win. But still, it's not the end then. There is no world peace. There's chaos. After the war, Mashiach ben David shows up, or at the tail end. Remember, they're coming together. It's like a relay race. So Ben David is also there, present. And then they work together to finish off the part of Esav that needs to go while rectifying that which is good. Remember, the head of Esav is buried in Ma'arat HaMachpelah. The head was the only good part of him while the body was out. There's still redemption to be made over there. There will be a lot of work that needs to be done, including building the temple, which we'll get to, or rather getting ourselves and the world ready for the temple to be built. Because it's not only by our physical hands. It's about us doing what we need to do, and then it will come. Once it's all said and done, before the temple, but during this cleansing process, this is where we see the past and our future. Exodus 14:30. On that day, the Lord saved Israel from the hands of the Egyptians. And Israel saw the Egyptians dying on the seashore, right? So it's Et Mitzrayim met al Sfatayim. We discussed that they actually saw the deity dead. But it's not the point. Now this is the end of the birth, and this is what Psalms 20 is about, right? Once they saw that, then they began to sing, right? Which is the end times prophecy. But we're going to read now Psalms 20, which discusses that which just happened, and since that just happened like that, that also will happen for the conductor. A song of David. May the Lord answer you on a day of distress. May the name of the God of Jacob fortify you. May he send your aid from his sanctuary, and may he support you from Zion. His sanctuary in Zion, that's here. May he remember all your meal offerings, and may he accept your fat burnt offerings forever. All the korbanot. May he give you as your heart desires, and may he fulfill all your counsel. Let us sing praises for your salvation, and let us assemble in the name of our God. May the Lord fulfill all your requests. Now I know that the Lord saved his anointed. I'll read it in Hebrew. Ata yadati ki yoshia Hashem meshicho. Ya'aneu mishmei kodsho bigvurot yesha yamino. He answered, past tense, him from his holy heavens with the mighty acts of salvation from his right hand. Mercy. Ben David. Get it? These trust in chariots. These guys. Trust in chariots and these in horses. Who is all about you hear chariots and horses? It's Pharaoh right away. The Egyptians. Idolaters. The darkness. Everything. All the powers that be. But we mention the name of the Lord, our God. They kneel and fall, but we rise and gain strength. Simultaneous. You see, when we are down, they are up. But when we begin to rise, this town ain't big enough for the two of us. O Lord, save us. May the King answer us on the day we call. Adonai Yoshia Melech Ya'anenu B'yom Korenu. And what is the day that we call? Are you calling today? Today's a good day to call. It's one of those things where I wish I brought more water. I have to make it last. Okay. This is a Psalms about the mother giving birth successfully as the child was born. Healthy child in peace. This, Psalms 20, this is the Psalms about the birth of Mashiach. 4. Velakachti, and I have taken you, Israel, for myself as a nation, and I will be your God. Where is this? This is Mount Sinai. This is for the giving of the Torah. So you see, now when Ben David shows up in order, order is going to be restored. Order is going to be made in the world. This is where the knowledge of God will increase. People's knowledge of God will increase. Knowledge means knowing on a personal, intimate level the truth. And when this happens, there are no more arguments. Deuteronomy 4:35, you have been shown in order to know that the Lord, He is God. There is none else besides Him. Ata הראת לדעת כי אדוני הוא האלוהים אין עוד מלבדו. Please repeat after me. Ein od milvado. There is none else besides him. Remember this, and I promise you, all your problems go away. Okay? This is the point that we strive to get to, as you can see. You start focusing on this right now, all of a sudden you will see the triviality, is that a word? Trivialness? The unimportance of everything except this. And when you know where everything comes from, ein od milvado, so you don't get things twisted as humanity has done since the dawn of time. Behold your source. Joel 3:1 happens then. And it shall come to pass afterwards that I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and daughters shall prophesy, your elders shall dream dreams, your young men shall see visions. When we know this, this is what's going to happen. Because up until now, people have been worshiping the faucet instead of recognizing that the water comes from an endless spring of life. This is the process. You see? You got a raise at work. You thank your boss, right? Or whatever. Look what you're looking at instead of what you should be looking at. This is how the world is going right now. Look at what you need to be looking at. And it might not necessarily be as grand as you think. It's a point. God is everywhere and everything. He is everything. He is nothing. You understand? He is everywhere. He is nowhere. He is in everything. And speaking of water, Isaiah 11:9, they shall neither harm nor destroy on all my holy mount, for the land shall be full of knowledge of the Lord as water covers the seabed. And this is when we will be on the level as the children of Israel were when they received the Torah on Mount Sinai. They saw things. Oh, let me tell you, they saw things. Their eyes were glowing just like Moses' face when he came down. They saw everything. They understood. They knew. As the Ramchal said in Da'at Tevunot, knowing God's plan, perfectly named, the fourth stage is when God's glory is revealed to all his creation. Yes, the foxes too, in such a way that it can be grasped, through inner knowledge and direct experience, rather than through an external agency of miracles. It's like when a prophet sees things, he's not watching it necessarily like he's watching a TV screen, but he is rather present in what he is watching. See what I'm saying? You get it. Then they will see and experience his glory through an outpouring of knowledge and wisdom. Experience, not just seeing, hearing, believing. Knowing is different. Knowing, that means you are there. You are present in where it is taking place. Now we find this concept expressed in the verses in Isaiah 11:9, which we just read. They shall neither harm nor destroy on my holy mount, for the land shall be full of knowledge of the Lord, as water covers the seabed. And in Isaiah 52:8, the voice of your watchmen, they raised a voice together, they shall sing, for eye to eye shall see when the Lord returns to Zion. And 40 verse 5, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh together shall see that the mouth of the Lord spoke. Then they will not need miracles and wonders to verify their belief. You see, this is the problem. Verifying your belief. When God reveals the truth, there is no more faith. There is only knowledge. Faith doesn't exist if you have the absolute truth. Do I believe that I'm holding a glass of water, or am I holding a glass of water? I know I am, because here it is. And that's knowledge of water right there. But you get the point. This knowledge is absolutely clear, and it is true, and does not leave any room for doubt. They will all know God through their own personal experience. It says in Deuteronomy, don't be deceived by signs and wonders. I'll do signs and wonders, but don't be deceived by them. You'll know when you know. That's why, if you look at the past, people run after dudes doing signs and wonders. Someone turning water into wine, not so much impressed. I mean, awesome trick, but the Baba Sali was doing it 30, 40 years ago. Turned water into wine in front of everyone. These are incantations and using holy names from the Torah. Elijah and Elisha raised people from the dead who became Habakkuk and Jonah. Wonderful. These things can be done. You understand? But let's not run after them and make them God. This was the level of awareness of all Israel back then, everything that they attained on Mount Sinai, as written in Deuteronomy 5:4. Face to face the Lord spoke with you at the mountain out of the midst of the fire. You see, before the giving of the Torah on Mount Sinai, Israel had the revelation of signs and wonders in Egypt and at the sea, right? Even the nations saw that. They believed God. They believed that this is the God of Israel. Yep, but do you know God? Different story. But only after this, only after all that happened, Velakachti, and I have taken you for myself as a nation, and I will be your God. Why is this the order of things? Because God doesn't rely on signs and wonders that he himself performs. I do this, I do that. If you follow that, you're a fool. These signs should not impress you, says God. Which is why you shouldn't be either. That's how people are and have been easily fooled for thousands of years. But rather, and I will take you to me as a people, and I will be your God. I will be a God to you. And then you will know that I am the Lord your God. Not when you see signs and wonders that I myself perform, but rather when I take you to me as a people, then you will know. There will be no question who has brought you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians. God himself is saying, don't even be impressed by the signs and wonders that I do, because that's not the end game. That's a nice show, but wait for it. And when you will know, so will all flesh, and there will be no more speculations or opinions. There will be an absolute knowledge of the truth. And guess what? The truth is absolute within itself. That is what the truth is. In Ramchal's 138 Openings of Wisdom, the Ramchal says, however, perfection itself will function only in the times to come. When it said in Isaiah 51:4, hearken to me, my people, and my nation, bend your ears to me when Torah shall emanate from me directly, and my judgment shall be for the light of the peoples. I will give them rest. Meaning, ha'azinu, listen, ha'azinu, right? Ha'azin hashamayim, ha'azinu, ki Torah me'itit etzeh. It will come from me. No more Torah teachers. God. Meaning, in other words, we're all going to know Torah, as it says in Jeremiah, right? Meaning that a new level of Torah will come forth from God. A new level of Torah. Not just, and Moses went here and Abraham did that. No. It is behind the letters. It is in between the letters. It is the essence of everything. That is what will be taught. That we will know. This is knowledge. It's no discussion. I can't even begin to imagine. Initially, the only aspect of the Torah that was given was that which is bound up in the building of the cycle itself. A radiation of God's unity to keep the world in existence, right? We have to fulfill the Torah. The Torah has to keep turning and churning. However, in the time to come, the Torah will be given from its supreme source, as we were supposed to get during the first tablets, which is the unity functioning as what it truly is in itself. The absolute truth. These were the first tablets, but Golden Calf, Erev Rav, we got some cleaning up to do, but then we are going back to what was and how it should be. For this reason, after this, there will be no more flaws and deficiencies whatsoever. And in the Graz commentary for Habakkuk 3:2, O Lord, I heard a report of you. I feared, O Lord, your deed. In the midst of the years, revive it. In the midst of the years, let it be known. In anger, you shall remember to have mercy. But we want to focus on, in the midst of the years, let it be known. Bekerev shanim todia. Todia, ladat, knowledge, known. This is referring to the Mishkan, the tabernacle, when God brings back the temple. God brings back the temple, as alluded to in Exodus 6:7. And I will take you to me as a people, and I will be a God to you, and you will know that I am the Lord, your God. right? Okay. And of course, in the building of the tabernacle itself, where Israel saw and knew in the desert the Shekhinah, Shochen, dwelling, that the Shekhinah of God dwells amongst them. And also, as written in Parashat Tetzaveh, Exodus 29, 45, 46, I will dwell in the midst of the children of Israel, and I will be their God. V'shachanti, Shekhinah, Mishkan, betoch bnei Israel, inside bnei Israel, v'aiti lahem le'Elohim, v'yad'u, and they will know that I am their God, who brought them out from Egypt. See, here's again, brought them out from Egypt. Why? You will know, who brought them out from the land of Egypt in order that I may dwell in them. Why did I bring you out? That I may dwell betocham, leshochni betocham. That's why I brought you there to begin with. That's why I brought you out, because I will dwell inside you. Hold that thought. I am the Lord their God. This is what Habakkuk was referring to when he said, let it be known. Then it will be known, that dwelling. The Gra also said in his commentary for Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Formation, that after Israel received the Ten Commandments, they were commanded to build the Mishkan. We discussed, because when Israel were at Mount Sinai, they received the actual knowledge of the truth. What are you going to do with it now? As we discussed in Deuteronomy 4:35, you have been shown in order to know that the Lord, He is God. There is none else beside Him. Ein od milvado. Write that down. Ein od milvado. Say that whenever you are in trouble. Understand what you are saying. See what happens. And yet, believe it or not, the greater revelation than Mount Sinai was the work of their own hands to build a place for God to dwell among them. Because this is what God wanted. He said, it wasn't their own opinion. Let's build the invisible God a house. No, God said to do this. This included the clouds of glory, which dwelt above the Mishkan and led and protected them wherever they went. They were covered on all sides, before them, behind them, everywhere, even underneath them, says the Midrash. This is something that not only Israel saw, but every nation around them witnessed God's favor towards His people. One of the incredible miracles, when they dwelt in the wilderness, in the desert. There's sand in the desert. It's rocky, right? There were millions of people over there. Not a single speck of dust was in any of their dwelling places. Everything was completely flattened and clean. Amazing. Numbers 14:14. They will say about the inhabitants of this land, who have heard that you, O Lord, are in the midst of this people, that you, the Lord, appear to them eye to eye, and that your cloud rests over them, and you go before them with a pillar of a cloud by day and with a pillar of fire by night. To which the nations would say, Song of Songs 3:6, מי זאת עולה מן המדבר כתמרות עשן מקוטרת מור ולבונה מכל אבקת רוכל. Who is this coming up from the desert, like columns of smoke, perfumed with myrrh and frankincense, of all the powder of the peddler? Who is this indeed? This is Israel, right? And this is the greatness that we are hoping for, yearning for, that which has not been seen before, nor will there be such a thing after this. The voice of your watchmen, they raised a voice together. They shall sing, for eye to eye shall see, when the Lord returns to Zion. Isaiah 52:8. Wow. Sorry. I'm feeling much better, by the way. I need more water. So, we understand that at first, the land will be filled with the knowledge of God. Here are your stages. With the knowledge of God, as it was with Israel on Mount Sinai. And then they will rise. We will rise even more to the point of every eye actually seeing the Lord's return to Zion, just like the glory of God over the Mishkan. Now again, make no mistake. This is where it's at. God is, everywhere, obviously, but the glory of God is here. We just cannot see it. You understand? It will appear. That's what people will be able to see. He ain't hanging out in a different country now, I promise you. Furthermore, in knowing God's plan and in the way of God, Ramchal's books, there is another stage to take into consideration, and that is of man. From the time that he is born to the time that he can stand on his own, well, babies, right? But still, it's called matzav yenika, the position of nursing. All right, I'll explain. Yenika, linok, is breastfeeding, okay? But the point is the stage of absorption, right? The baby absorbs the breast milk and therefore he grows and gets strong, okay? And this word we need to remember in this context, okay? So remember the yenika. For instance, haklipot yonkim min hakdusha. The shell, the husks, the tum'ah, the impurities absorb from the holiness. Like we discussed, other religions, they leech onto our religion and they try and suck all the spirituality out of it, but they say that it's theirs, right? So we discussed this. No holiness of their own, spiritual leeches, if you will. So this position of absorption is likened to us today in the exile. We are still like helpless babies. We have the Torah, which was given to us from heaven. We have it, right? We're reading it. You have it. Everybody has it. And it will be in our hands for eternity. That's only us. That's not the nations. Because with God, there are no takebacks. Not to mention that God put his name in us, so there's no getting out of that. Furthermore, God is known amongst the nations because he chose us. He revealed himself to the world through us. However, there are no signs, meaning no open miracles, even though if you look what happened just in the state of Israel in the return after the last 73 years, again, regardless of whatever nefarious plans they got going on, look what happened. Look at our wars. Impossible. 300-1. Boom. That ain't us. Not by our own strength. So we have no open miracles. There are no prophets. And the true wisdom is lacking from within us. And that true wisdom is Ruach HaKodesh. Now, this is a stage we did not see in Egypt. Because the difference between now and then is that they did not receive the Torah during the elevation process, only afterwards. But we, today, already have the Torah, which they received back then. They received only after the whole redemption process, then it was the Torah. So what's going to happen to us? Because we do have the Torah, we're going to elevate to even greater heights than before, to the level of prophecy, then to absolute knowledge after that. Now, all this, meaning the levels by which Israel were elevated to so very quickly right after the Exodus, is what is said in Deuteronomy 16:3. For in haste you went out of the land of Egypt, right? You shall not eat leaven with it. For 7 days you shall eat matzah, the bread of affliction. For in haste you went out of the land of Egypt. Ki bechipazon yatzata me'eretz Mitzrayim. Remember this. Haste you went out of the land of Egypt. Now, the Arizal, the Ari HaKadosh, right? In his book, Shar HaKavanot, the Gates of Intentions, he says that God hastened this process in order for all the impurity to fall off Israel. I got to lift you up because the impurity will eventually fall off you. So that's what happened. He's the one that lifted us up. That the grasp of the ra, of the evil, will cease because so long as they have any kind of impurity, meaning Israel back then, they would not be able to be redeemed. Where I'm going, you can't go. So God takes us, he shakes us off, he shakes us, and everything that is impure comes off. And that shaking, it's not a nice thing, right? But in the times to come, as it says in Isaiah 52:12, for not with haste shall you go forth. Look at the opposite. It says, Ki lo bechipazon tetzu. Ki bechipazon yatzata me'eretz Mitzrayim. Ki lo bechipazon tetzu. For in haste you went out of the land of Egypt. For not with haste you shall go forth in the end. Because after the final exile is complete, Israel would have already been corrected according to the levels of ascension. We have been suffering. We have been in bondage. Like you wouldn't believe, our souls are screaming. Not for 86 years, not for 210 years, not for 400 years, for over 2,000 years, actually for over 3,000 years if you think about it. We never left Egypt. Because at that time, the impurity will be completely broken, meaning in the days to come, it will be completely broken, and therefore there is no need to rush. We're not running from anything anymore. There's nothing to run from. We are going to advance step by step, little by little, as God's redemption process goes. Kima kima, as we say. 5. Veheveti, and I have brought you to the land I promised Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Where is that? It's where I currently sit. This is finally the gathering of all of Israel, wherever or whoever they may be. But let's read the whole verse, because there is another element here. Again, you could be dying to come to Israel because you really believe that you're part of Israel, but then you get to Israel, Mashiach comes and it's like, what are you doing here? Leave. You understand? Mashiach is the one who's going to say who's from what tribe and who doesn't even belong. Excuse me. Okay, so we're going to read the whole verse because there's another element. And here's the other element. Exodus 6:8. I will bring you to the land concerning which I raised my hand to give to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, and I will give it to you as a heritage. I am the Lord. והבאתי אתכם אל הארץ אשר נשאתי את ידי לתת אותה לאברהם, ליצחק, ליעקב, ונתתי אותם לכם מורשה, אני השם. ונתתי. I have given. Now this sounds almost identical to the word natati, which is I planted. There's a tet instead of a taf over there, and there's an ayin. Natati, nataati, natati. But you say this, natati, natati. It sounds the same when you say it. Okay. And you are correct. That is not a coincidence. There are many hidden rules in biblical Hebrew, one of which is that even if the words have different spelling, but they sound the same, they are related, and we're about to see that right now. I'm going to give you a wonderful example. Veheveti, and I have brought you to the land, right? And this is Israel. And I have planted you in the land to inhabit it, which is done through the building of the Mishkan and the temple. As the Gra said in Sefer Yetzirah, that Israel were uprooted, natati, planted, uprooted from Egypt, and were planted, and were not planted until they entered the land of Israel. Exodus 15:17 says, in the Song of the Sea, you shall bring them and plant them. Where? On the mount of your heritage, directed toward your habitation, which you made, O Lord, the sanctuary, O Lord, which your hands founded. Teviemo vetitaemo, natati, titaemo, you will plant them. We have already discussed that this song, which Moses sang, is what he will be singing in the last day. Az yashir Moshe uvnei Israel. Then Moses and all of Israel will sing this song, and they will say, furthermore, Psalms 80 verse 9, you uprooted a vine from Egypt, you drove out the nations and planted it. Exactly what God said that he was going to do. The process, though, was never complete, as you see. Prophecy is still going to be fulfilled. And so the temple will not be planted until they come to the land, as will the name of God. They won't be planted until the temples come in there. 1 Kings 9:3, and the Lord spoke to him, Solomon. The Lord spoke to Solomon. I have heard your prayer and your petition, which you have petitioned before me. I have consecrated this temple, which you have built, to place my name there forever. That means forever. And my eyes and my heart shall be there at all times. So God never left, right? So when people are going to see the Lord return to Zion, they're just going to see him appear, and guess where he always was, right? The power source is still there. It's just shut off because of the current tenants More like trespassing squatters, but whatever. But all these prophecies and everything we discussed on the matter really can be summed up in Exodus 15:17. So let's break it down. You shall bring them up and plant them, Israel, in the land of Israel, on the mount of your heritage, Temple Mount, right? Directed towards your habitation, knowing God's name, which you, O Lord, which you made, O Lord, the sanctuary, the temple. O Lord, which your hands founded. That means it is eternal. And that is still a holy site, and it always will be. Because it's not ours, it's God's holy site. And you all know what comes next, right? In the line of prophecies, right? Once all these stages are complete, Zechariah 14:9, and the Lord shall become king over all the earth on that day. Bayom Ahu shall the Lord be one and his name one. Everything becomes one. So you see now this process that has to take place, and this is after Mashiach ben David comes. There will be work to do, because then there's no rush. No one will be chasing us. We will all be working together, and it's all good. So when Israel are planted in the land of Israel, then the name of God will be revealed in its wholeness. And this will be done through the building of the temple within them, as God told Solomon in 1 Kings 9:3. I have consecrated this temple which you have built to place my name there forever, and my eyes and my heart shall be there at all times. And in Ezekiel's prophecy in 37:25-28, it says, and they shall dwell in the land that I have given to my servant to Jacob, wherein your forefathers lived, and they shall dwell upon it, they and their children and their children's children, forever. And my servant David shall be their prince forever. Mashiach ben David. Here we go. We're reading it. This is what's coming. And I will form a covenant of peace for them. An everlasting covenant shall be with them. And I will establish them, and I will multiply them. And I will place my sanctuary in their midst forever. Venatati et mikdashi, my temple, mikdashi, my temple, my sanctuary, betocham, inside them forever. And my dwelling place shall be over them, and I will be to them for a God, and they shall be to me as a people. And the nations shall know, yes, the nations shall know that I am the Lord, who sanctifies Israel, when my sanctuary is in their midst forever. Sanctuary has to come for all this to happen. Because only then, once this is done, will the exodus from Egypt truly be fulfilled and complete, as written in 6:8. I will bring you to the land concerning which I raised my hand to give to Abraham, Isaac, and to Jacob, and I will give it to you as a heritage. I am the Lord. And thus concludes our class. So stay tuned for next week's class, which we will start discussing the beginning of the final redemption through judgment and the conclusion through mercy. I know we've been discussing this concept, but now we're going to really get into it. So as always, thank you so much for joining me. Have a wonderful rest of the week, and have a Shabbat Shalom. Bye-bye.